Again, my name is Cynthia Kasecki. I'm the Director of Scholarships and Philanthropy. And today's webinar is going to touch on applications, the rubric, and then we'll do a Q&A. Along with the application, I did want to go through verification. I've seen lately in some of the Facebook groups that I'm involved in where people are talking about the eligibility and how they can better improve their process with their application. So I'll touch a little bit on that because I know it's a question that comes up a lot. And if you take a look at our newsletter, I did write a small article on the verification and then a little bit on whether to do your scholarship program in either a digital or still, traditional style of mailing in printed applications. So we'll touch a little bit on that in today's conversation. But first, I just want to share with you all, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll start with the application. Right, so hopefully you can all see my screen here. And it might be a little bit small for folks in the recording, but just bear with me. This is a sample scholarship application. It will be available as supplemental material for our members. Again, membership is free for clubs, and if you want to be an individual member, you can take a look and see how you can do that. But you can get membership through your club. So talk to your club and join us. But in front of you right now, you have a scholarship application, just sample here. And some things that I just want to touch on the application. Again, I talked about the digital or the paper application. I am most familiar with the mail-in application process. There are some great software out there that will digitize the application for you. If those of you joining us want to put on chat if you do yours digitally, what software you use out there. I know most scholarship programs that have digitized their application use Google Forms. So there's other ways to do that. But you can modernize your scholarship program by just taking your application that you have now and then, obviously transferring over into a digital application. Okay, so yeah, I have Robin who said last year your club used Google Forms. Yeah, so Google Forms is one of the most popular to use to digitize the application. One of the things to keep in mind when digitizing the application is that you want to ensure that you have everything available there digitally. So what I mean by that is, making sure that you have your categories in there for, people to know if that's a completely separate, maybe supplemental form on there that they can look at, that you have all your guidelines based off of your constitution and bylaws. So specifically talking about, what categories are available. Most spouses clubs definitely have like high school seniors. Other clubs have added college students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate. They've added the continuing education for military spouses who are going back into any sort of program, whether it's undergraduate or graduate or PhD level. And I've also seen other clubs that have taken it further and added a separate category for students who are going into trade schools. So make sure that whether you're using the traditional or a digital, that you are ensuring that you're giving the information needed to the applicant so that they apply for the appropriate category. If that is not, very obvious to your applicant, then you're going to be inundated with questions. If I'm a military dependent, I'm 19 and I'm going to you're going to get all those questions coming in. And so you want to make sure that all of that is written out somewhere where, people have access to it. And you want to mirror it from, your constitution and bylaws. What does your bylaws state? What categories are available? So you want to do that. On this sample application, you can see that we have traditional students and what that means. And then on the number 2 is continuing education. And then, what does that mean? What is that category? You also want to, maybe put in there how each category is going to be judged. So, you might want to put some of that criteria. And then obviously, any questions that come up, who do they need to contact? Who's going to be answering those questions? I've been in clubs where the scholarship chairperson is the point of contact. It can, definitely be somebody within your committee that is doing that. So, there's a variety of ways for you to delegate those tasks. But again, your best resource is going to be your constitution and bylaws. What, has been voted on and what has the club decided to give out. The part that always stumps spouses clubs is eligibility. So who can apply? You want to make sure that, again, you go to your governing documents and take a look. Are there people that you're not including? So I recommend doing a very comprehensive community needs assessment. I think it's good to do it, maybe every 2 years. If you're seeing a significant change in your community, perhaps the military service that is in your at your installation has decided to bring in other units, or some units are being, reduced. So if there's significant changes that are going on your installation or your post, make sure that, you're keeping up with that, so that as a club, you're doing a community needs assessment. Are the same individuals in your community who you're trying to give the scholarship to, is it applicable to those folks? Are you having an increase in, maybe enlisted families coming in? Or are you having an increase on DoD civilians, or an increase on retiree population? So you want to make sure that you're doing a complete needs assessment, so that you're reaching the people who you're trying to reach ultimately. So you can see here that spouses or dependent children of active duty, reserve, retired active duty military, officer enlisted, or DoD civilians who are enrolled in full or part-time accredited degree programs. So that's another thing. Are you going to give it to full-time, to half-time, to, part-time? What types of degree programs maybe? Are you doing a STEM scholarship, for example? So you want to touch all those eligibility criteria. Most people, most clubs, they just go from year to year. So a lot of this is not being changed because they're thinking, well, only thing we got to change is the date, right? Let's look at the timeline, and, we're going to just stay as is. And then, come application deadline time, some of the questions being asked is, why do we only have, a certain amount of applications at this period? perhaps there are other scholarship opportunities in the area that are probably taking precedence, or perhaps it comes down to your eligibility. Are those community members still in your community, or is your scholarship still relevant to the needs of your community? So these are some questions that you need to be asking today, right now, at this time in the fall period of your club timeline, because you want to make sure that you're meeting those needs and you're not going into a scholarship program where at the end of the day, come application deadline, which could be anywhere from March to April of 2023, that you're asking yourself why you're not getting applicants applying to your scholarship program. So these are some things that I wanted to bring up that are very key to your program. So if you're a scholarship chairperson, start asking those questions. Go back to your after action report from your previous scholarship chairperson, looking at some of the questions that maybe members brought up last year. So take a look. I had a club recently that decided to add the family members of retirees. One of the reasons why that club voted to add family members of the retirees, such as their grandchildren. So when I say family member, I really mean grandchild, because the retiree population is greater than any of the other constituencies in that club. So they decided to allow the grandchildren of a retiree club member to apply. So that was an added on eligibility to their scholarship program. So, things like that you need to really take a look. So doing a really great community needs assessment. Another thing that I wanted to touch on applications, and I don't know if anyone has any questions or any comments so far as eligibility and the type of categories.
There's nothing in the chat at the moment. Everybody is available to come off mute and ask a question if they'd like.
Wonderful, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, what can you do as far as modernizing your scholarship program into a digital application, or keeping it as a mail-in form? And that's really going to be up to the club. If you're a very small club and your scholarship person can easily take in mail, make extra copies for the judging committee, or I know I didn't make extra copies. What I did is I had it scanned, and then I put them on memory sticks, on memory drives, and I gave each judge a memory stick, and they scroll through the applications and make comments, and kept an Excel spreadsheet, a scoring sheet on Excel for me, and then they just emailed me the scoring sheet at the deadline date. So there's a variety of ways that you can do your judging process, but you want to again take a look at what are those needs of your club and the needs of your community. If it's a very small club and it doesn't make sense to take that energy and that time to digitize your application, then don't do it. Right? You might want to give your energy and time to something else within the scholarship program. And perhaps maybe that is marketing or social media marketing, or, adding some time for you to visit with school counselors and, attend school events to get the application out there. So, maybe dedicating your time somewhere else might be better served for your club. So think about, what are those needs? If your club is getting, an influx of applications, then it would be easier for you to digitize it because you can keep better track of them. Or, maybe your scholarship chairperson is very savvy, in the modernization of that program, then go for it. Modernize the scholarship program and then do it, digitally. So here, I just real quickly we just want to scroll through the sample on, what can be on your application. Not every application looks the same. Again, not every scholarship program has the same needs. So, just keep in mind, again, your governing documents have to be mirrored. So, any of your awards, how you're going to be awarding, what your application deadline is, make sure that it is within the time frame that your governing documents stipulate. This one here, you can tell in this bold area here that if they're going to, email it to the scholarship chairperson, it has to be emailed with a time stamp that's no later than 11:59 p.m. on, whatever date. It even goes down to postmarked no later than. If you're not going to go through a postmarked date and it just needs to be in your mailbox, but by a certain time, you want to make that clear. So you want to be as clear and concise as possible so that your applicant can, make sure that they're following it and there's no question of, unfairness or, clarity from your side that, the applicant can come back and say, wait a minute, you didn't say this, or you didn't do that, or you didn't ask me to do this. So you want to make sure that you're going through that and that you're having somebody check, your grammar and the detail on that application. There was one time in one of our committees, we were like in a discussion on just the word in just the difference between and or. If we could keep an and or an or in one of our sentences. And and it turned into a really long discussion on on just that one, just those two words, what it means and how people will read it. And so you want to make sure that your and your ors are very clear to your committee, as well as what does that mean to the applicant. I know in our webinar part 1, one of the panel members I had, she said she had the application go through a legal review. So if you have time for that, if you have somebody that can do that for you, you have the resource. If the JAG person at your community, is willing to take a look at it, by all means, have legal review it, because, just one little word in there can make a difference. I think Robin says her co-chair is an attorney. Yes. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So you have somebody already who can help you with, just the word choices, right? Because it can have some really great implications that, people can come back and say, hey, wait a minute, you said and, or wait a minute, you have an or on there. Those two come in mind, but I'm sure you can find other ones that can make a difference on what it means in the end. Yes, thank you, Robin. Yes, go line by line through that application. Absolutely. Just like you would have a bylaws review committee, it's very very important for scholarship programs also to do, you know, a similar thing where you're bringing in the committee and you're doing a line by line. Is this still relevant? If you had a bylaws review, then clearly it means scholarship programs, your welfare programs have to have a review, because something could have changed in those bylaws that now are completely irrelevant to your scholarship application, to your rubric, you know, to your timeline. You know, so you want to do the same thing. Hey, you know, when the bylaws review committee and they met, what changed for my program? And then take a look at that and, you know, and do a similar review, because you definitely do not want to upload the application come, you know, November, December timeframe, and it not be, you know, in compliance with any of your governing documents. So, you know, want to make sure that somebody is taking a look at it, your committee is reviewing it, and, you know, and you're getting that final approval by the board saying, okay, you know, yes, everything looks good, everything is, you know, been reviewed, and you're not gonna, you know, run into any problems, you know, mitigate those risks for the spring season when you have applicants applying. So here you want to make sure that you're always bolding, you know, the application deadline, that those dates are, you know, are all correct in every single page that you've decided to put it on there. That you have anything that has to be either printed or signed, you know, that the applicant knows what needs to be signed where, who needs to fill out what information. I've seen applications where they have a particular page for the sponsor, you know, the military member, to fill it out. They had another page where like the high school counselor had to fill it out. So make sure that the applicant is aware of who needs to fill out what in the application. Anything from the other thing I wanted to cover with applications is verification. In the newsletter, I briefly went through some of the regulation and policy that you can no longer be, you know, making a picture, you know, or scanning a military ID. I hope that clubs are not, you know, doing that anymore. Used to be a thing of a past. There's other ways for you to, you know, prove that the applicant is affiliated in some way, that, you know, they have a sponsor, or in some cases, some clubs also want to verify that the military member lives within a certain radius. I've also seen where, you know, you have a lot of maybe geobatch families, geographically separated families, and the club, you know, is still allowing, you know, for the family to apply as long as that military member is within the radius of the club. So that's another thing to look at. You know, your geographically separated families. Are you still meeting the needs of those families? Some clubs might say, you know, the family in totality, you know, has to be in that radius. So, you know, looking really closely to your policy on inclusivity, right? Who are you going to include within your scholarship program? So taking a look at that, and how are they going to prove that they do meet the criteria, right? So I've seen people. I've been in a club where we had a utility letter, you know, that they could just easily upload. I have a question here. We had a wonderful command verification letter utilized that could, oh, I can't read the rest. Yeah, I think just a verification letter, I think, is what is coming up.
Yeah, so it says a command verification letter that could be signed by the company commander or the first sergeant. It was very well received once we moved away from ID card verification.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah. And if you take a look at the screen, it's kind of similar. It's just very, simple. You can make it as simple or as, or have them add more things on there. But this here is just a proof of DEER's enrollment form, and again, it's the kind of similar where you have the commander or their first sergeant sign on there, a duty phone, in case somebody maybe from the committee wants to call or verify that this is in fact true. You can even put a statement on here, that they are signing like a disclaimer or something on there that you can maybe get from legal, that it's a true and honest statement. And by signing this, they are, there's a lot of verbiage out there that you can use. But yeah, it definitely makes it easy where, the applicant can print it out, give it to their sponsor, and have their sponsor go in and get it signed by their commander. If you even want them to, get it, go through a notary, they can take it easily to JAG, get it notarized for free. That says, hey, this is in fact true. And then they have somebody that can notarize it. You could go, all the way into a notarized letter. But, this is a very easy here enrollment form that just commander signs it, real easy, doesn't require a notary, doesn't require, another witness other than the commander or first sergeant, and, and the sponsor verifying their information. There are other systems out there, if you have access to the .mil network, you can verify emails. So there's a variety and, a lot of suggestions and recommendations out there that you can take a look and see, hey, what best fits your program. So that you're not adding on, extra duties, right? That you're not having to go through and pay to verify or, think creatively and something that is minimal, time to you, but is also going to make sure and verify that there are really, meeting that criteria that you're trying to achieve. Lastly, on the application is, and hopefully I'm not making anybody sick here by scrolling through, but this one just goes really quickly through, what type of academic information you need. Are you doing an emphasis on extracurricular activities? This one has paid work experience that you want to emphasize, especially for, maybe some, high school kids are not necessarily involved in extracurricular, but they're working. So, you again, you want to, and we'll talk a little bit about this on the rubric side, but you want to look at your community and see, hey, what type of students do we have in our community? And are we making the application as fair as we can for everyone, to get the applicable points? And I'll go a little bit over that in the rubric section. But, if you have a lot of kids who are having to work outside the home and there's not a lot of extracurricular activities, there's not a lot of clubs, kids are not necessarily, all in athletic activities or band or choir or, orchestra, and you do have a lot of kids working, then, you might want to add that onto your application, paid work experience. Another thing, volunteering. So, all of the experience out there unpaid, that they're getting from any community service organization in your community. So that could be another, category that you want to have on there. And then this one has leadership. So, maybe your students are are striving, to be the president of National Honor Society, or, the drum major in their band, or JROTC, they want to be the, the leader in their NCO or in the officer ranks. So you want to make sure, hey, what criteria is an emphasis in your program? So are you trying to award your leaders, or are you trying to award kids who are very community service oriented? Are you trying to award a student that's very diverse and involved in a variety of things? More, holistic, looking at the individual, in a holistic manner. So think about, who are you trying to give this award to? And then emphasize it on your application. Yes, go ahead. I don't know who that is, but add something really quick regarding this topic.
So something I'm really passionate about, and I think is often discarded. I've been a part of several clubs, and there is not a lot of emphasis regarding the struggles that military children, particularly in high school.
Mhm.
And so our the last spouses club I was a part of, they actually had a Turn It Around scholarship for maybe a child who PCS their freshman or sophomore year and their GPA really struggled, but then they turned it around their junior or even their senior year. Because oftentimes our valedictorians, our high scholar achieving, your high test makers, I'm not discarding or discrediting those amazing achievements by any stretch of the imagination, but oftentimes I feel like it's in numbers, and there's not enough within our rubrics sometimes to say, oh, this child was in Brussels for 2 years and then PCS the middle of their junior year. So it's kind of like we need some consideration, just like when we have resume gaps because of a PCS or anything along those lines. And so this is one of the main reasons the last couple of times for this, I really want to share that with other spouse clubs. When you're putting together your categories or what you're looking for within your rubric, take that into consideration when you're grading or however you're racking and stacking these applications, that there may have been a gap because of a PCS in the middle. My son, I can use a personal example. We PCS'd 2 months into his freshman year, and his GPA was 1.75 his freshman year. But once we got settled and he acclimated and got connected within the community, he graduated with a 3.0. However, his cumulative GPA was lower, because they do the average. And so his scholarship options were very, very limited. If it was based on grades, there are merit scholarships, but just to throw it out there for our member clubs and going into the scholarship season, just try to keep that in mind, that there may be a lot of military children who are struggling that are not making a 4.0 or a 4.5 and, making the extremely high SAT scores. That I think we need to really recognize the struggles and the mental health load that comes on children wanting to go to college and they simply had a rough year. That's all I wanted to add.
Tiffany, no, thank you for adding that. That's really a great creative solution. The Turn It Around scholarship, I've never heard it in that way, but yeah, absolutely. Keeping in mind that, not all our kids are academically inclined, and that, we are PCSing, and that our military children are also, going through a transition, and being aware of that. And so, yeah, absolutely, adding something like that to your scholarship program, I think will be, an even greater testament that, we do want to, help our military families and empower our, military children. Robin, I think you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with Tiffany 100%. Our scholarship is we're trying to emphasize the kids' military experience and how that shaped their lives, and like they have a little essay for how did your military life uniquely shape your worldview. And I love that other clubs are emphasizing or at least honoring the kids who did struggle with having the military life and it affecting their school, because I mean it really is a huge issue. My son did we lived someplace different every year of high school for him, and that just really sucked. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so I just wanted to agree with Tiffany 100% and like give her a big hug.
No, thank you, Tiffany and Robin. This is a great, oh gosh, this is the wonderful thing about having these webinars, that we can, bring these issues up and definitely share with other clubs, and, hopefully they take these ideas and implement them in their scholarship programs, because we are seeing a mental health crisis in our military children, and kids are starting to talk about the effects of this military lifestyle, and these are great options for scholarship programs, to take heed and look at ways that they can empower those military children. And I think Tiffany added, make sure you're advertising it, contact your school counselors, and seek out those applicants so they know it's available. Yep, absolutely. And with that, Robin, I know you said your essays, that's another way to maybe give more points to the essay versus the transcript, the grade point average, and we'll talk about that in rubrics next, on how you can weigh different things to make sure that you are getting that applicant that you want to reach out to. Again, that turnaround scholarship, you can even just do an essay scholarship. There's ways that you can minimize your application, make it less cumbersome on the applicant, and maybe just do an essay contest, or lots of different creative ways to do that. I think Robin touched on the essay, and I have it on here. On this sample application, I've used this application in one of our clubs, and you can see here some of the questions that we asked, like, why are you a good candidate to receive this award? You can even go into, we were, obviously all of us went through COVID-19, and one of the questions was, what was the most significant memory during COVID-19, and how has it affected you and your future? We had described how your military affiliation has impacted your education and goals for the future. Another one was describe your most meaningful achievement and how it relates to your field of study and future goals. There's a lot of essay questions out there. I'd highly encourage, clubs to talk with each other. What are some essay questions that have worked in the past? There was one time, I had 4 questions, and it was interesting to see that every single military, the high school senior chose the exact same question. And I think it was, how is, being a military child impacted, I think it was impacted your education. And I thought, wow, 4 questions, and pretty much every high school senior chose the same question. So looking at that, what are the trends in your military, in your scholarship program, looking at trends, and, are those trends, working or not working, or, again, maybe doing an essay scholarship, is more applicable. Giving an opportunity for those, kids to talk about their experiences and how it's affected them. I had a scholarship program where I took just a small snippet during the ceremony. And, of course, you ask for permission from the applicants and before introducing them. And the essay question that they had to answer there, it was just one question, and it was, who is like a mentor or a significant person in your life who you look up to when it comes to your education. And it was interesting to see what a lot of the kids had to say and who they chose. And we took that snippet before introducing them, and we encouraged them to invite that particular person that they were talking about. So ways of, making your ceremonies or your scholarship receptions, more interesting and more applicable to your community, are great things to do. Yeah, if you have to log off, go ahead. So yeah, and hopefully you can, come back and view the rest of the webinar. Lastly, I wanted to touch on letters of recommendation. I know a few people are, either on or off the fence on recommendations. I think I had one council member tell me that they've completely removed recommendation or reference letters from their scholarship program because it was impacting the applicant on the recommender, not really taking time to, check for grammar and, and really, write really well-written reference letters. So, that again, it's club, have the club figure out if that's what they want to do, if it's still necessary. If it's just causing, more problems than rewards, for the applicants. So that's, again, applicable for, the club. Is it still working, or is it, hurting your applicants? All right, so I think,
Cynthia, we have one
yes,
more
go ahead.
comment. It says, I hope clubs are keeping in mind the effort required to apply for their scholarship and make it commensurate with the award. Every senior is overworked and stressed out. Some of the applications I've seen are a lot of effort for not a huge monetary reward.
Yes, great comment. Again, when I went through that recommendation letter, that reference letter, yeah, take a look at your, your monetary award that you're going to give them at the end, and think of all the applications, the scholarships that they're also applying to. You're not, the club scholarship is not the only thing that they're applying to. The materials that are involved, again, like I said, is it good to have the mail-in application or the digital application? Take a look at, what are your applicants saying? Is it too long of an application? For, $250 book scholarship, is it necessary to have letters of recommendation? Is it necessary to have, everything that you're asking for, official transcripts? I know one of our clubs requested an official transcript, and when I came into the club, that was something that I was very adamant about. I'm like, why are we having, these kids pay for an official transcript to our scholarship program? Is it really necessary? Can we, go through the process with an unofficial transcript? And, and the majority came back and said, yeah, why are we asking for an official transcript? So, we went with the unofficial transcript, save the people money and time. They could just upload it from their college, or, and do that. I know here, and when I say here, I'm here in Alexandria, Virginia, but I believe there are certain counties that require a fee for the counselor to do a high school transcript. So you want to look at that too. And I mean, it's not a huge amount, but $15, and how many of those are the kids paying for, right, to send to colleges? So, take a look at that. What are the school district's requirements, monetary requirements as well? And work that into your scholarship program so that you're not, again, making the process so cumbersome if they're not getting a huge, monetary award at the end. So great, yeah, great points on that. Oops. Sorry about that. Let me share my other screen here. Anything else before I go to rubrics? So when I go to rubrics, I'm pretty much going to just, again, really touch on the some of the things that you've all been bringing up. Tiffany had a great insight on the Turn It Around scholarship. You want to look again at the needs, right? The needs of your community, and then what type of applicant do you envision receiving this award, right? Who do you want to come up to the ceremony? Who do you want to highlight in your community, and look and seeing, that individual, right? And so you want to take that, and so you really should be working hand in hand, your rubric and your application, because what you're going to be judging then, should be weighted in the same manner on your application, right? It should have, if it's weighted higher, then it should have a higher emphasis on that application. If it's, nowhere in your rubric, then, why is it on your application, right? So they gotta fit, like a puzzle. They've got to go together. So when you're looking at your rubric, you're going to look at, what's on your application, and then what and how it should be assessed. So, how are you going to weigh those? I've seen people use a 100-point system. I've seen others that have used percentages. So however it is that your committee wants to work the math, that's on you. I don't think there's any, right way. Just make sure that you're doing the right thing in the end, right? That you're purposefully, with intention, keeping that integrity and the credibility right at hand. So with that, there are two rubrics. So when you're looking at rubrics, you want to figure out, what type of rubric you want. So I'm going to touch here on the holistic and what does that mean. So here you can just see this rubric. It's just very simple rubric, score from 1 to 4. And it gives you there how you're going to score what. So you have a score of 1, means just very basic, application is complete and all materials are excellent. Whereas a 4 is application is incomplete and or most, if not all, materials are of poor quality. And then, your 2 and 3s are medium, a medium range there. So, obviously this can be very subjective. Your judge might have a problem deciding between the 2 and 3. So this is why I want you to kind of look at the rubric as, how well you want to go into this rubric in defining your scores, so that there is no subjectivity on, the judge's part. Of course, you're not going to be able to control everything on the judge. And we touched a little bit about this on webinar 1 with your judges, that you want to have a clear, orientation and foundation set on your judges so that there's, a lot of subjectivity doesn't come into play. So your holistic rubric, is just very simple, and not as, detailed or clearly defined rubric, but it might work for some clubs if it's small and, and your vision for your applicant is, a specific individual. The analytical rubric goes into more details, so it's going to be more clearly defined, and it's going to be broken into like every subset that you're looking at judging on the application. So this is an opportunity for you to break it down to, academics, leadership, essay, reference letters. So every single thing that you're asking for is going to be given a score. And then obviously you're going to have a cumulative score at the end, right? So it's a great opportunity if you want to do the, 100 points. And then how are you going to score, each category, and then it totals up. So again, if your scholarship program is a $250 book scholarship, does it make sense to have an analytic rubric? Right? If you're only doing, say, an essay scholarship for, $500, is an analytic rubric, in place. So think about, what makes sense and how you're going to apply each rubric. So again, you want to define that criteria for the rubric. What are you looking at? What are you requesting? If you're not requesting test scores and letters of recommendation and, transcripts, you name it, then, maybe a, holistic rubric might work, best for you, where, you're not breaking everything down into a category. So this kind of just gives you an idea of, things that you can request for here on defining that criteria. So you want to look at, if you want, the top students in your community, the ones who are going to go, make it to Ivy League schools, they're, going to go to, the top colleges in the United States, then, you're going to have to be asking for a GPA and test scores and, all that great fun stuff, in academics, right? Maybe the club wants to have their sports superstars. So, you got to define, the criteria of what your applicant looks like. So again, what is your skill, your rating level going to look like? Is it going to be, 1 through 5, 1 through 10, or are you going to give percentages? All that numeric scoring is very useful because, again, it's not subjective. You can, add it, you can divide it, right? You're giving a number score to everything. But, making sure that, again, as you're designing that rating scale, that it makes sense and that you're weighting based on, your final product. What do you want that applicant to look like? If you want, kids who are great communicators, effective communicators, in writing, and, then your essay is going to be weighted heavier than, what they're doing anywhere else. If your award is community service, then, if you want your servant leaders, they're in community service or volunteering, then obviously your weighted will be on the community service side of the application, right? So, again, in the ratings, one thing with the descriptions, as I said, in the holistic, there might be issues with the 2 and the 3, in the example I gave previously, but you want to make it as accurately as you possibly can for your judges, right? You want to make sure that you're giving them the description of, what is the difference between the 1 and the 4, your extremes, and then really try to define, that middle ground. What makes the difference between, a 2 and a 3 rating? So just really taking a good look at writing those descriptions. One of the great things is maybe do a test run. So, send the application, to a committee member and have them take a look, or, do a test run with your rubric. making sure that those descriptions are, are making sense. And then lastly, to finalize your rubric, you want to just make sure that you have, and I said for now, because it's an ongoing update. So you want to make sure that, again, your rubric is mirroring the end goal, right? The final goal. So you want to take a look at your rubric. That rubric should be giving, as close to 100 to that applicant that you are seeing come up to the podium, right? So, taking really close look at everything that I've put on this rubric and how I've rated it is exactly the person that we want to award in the end. Again, this is important to do a test run, send it out to folks to get some feedback. It's always great to, maybe have, committee members. I will leave it up to you if you want to make your rubric transparent. And what I mean is, do you put on your website how things are going to be weighted? Not necessarily your grade, your rubric sheet, but, do you give the applicant an idea of, where are the most weighted, so the applicant can make sure and take more time in those areas? Are you being transparent, right, with how you're reviewing the applicant? So those are suggestions that, you need to decide as a club, what's important, and you want to be transparent so that there's no question at the end on how they were graded. Here are just some other considerations. We're in a, our lifestyle is obviously full of acronyms, but, you want to not use, any acronyms, cut off some words, TGIF, you want to make the language as plain. Again, legal review is great because it will help you, make sure that you're communicating effectively with the applicant. Any questions on the rubric? I know I went real quickly here, but there is a sample rubric that I'm going to upload for you all to take a look. I know one thing that came up with the rubric, the template that I'm going to upload, is the GPA. So in one of the clubs, our GPAs for military children was going above 4.0. A lot of times the way that AP and IP classes are weighted, those kids at GPAs, I'm not even kidding you, were like at 4.7, 4.8. And so those are things that you need to just look at in your club. Are you having a lot of students with AP and IP access? Are those classes actually available for those students? The problem that we ran into with that rubric is that it was putting homeschooled students at a disadvantage. The homeschool community there could not take, a course at the public school, even if they wanted to. So a lot of their curriculum was either coming through a co-op or, the parent had them on like an online curriculum with maybe possibly no access to an AP IP level course. And so, it gave them an unfair advantage, obviously, in that one category. So also taking a look, right, if it's still important for you to gather that GPA, but that you have a pretty, a good population of homeschooled children, then how can you take a look at that rubric so that you're not giving them an unfair, disadvantage? So, how can you weigh that section so that the homeschool student can still, be a good candidate for your award without, getting hit on the GPA category, right? So, taking a look at all those very extreme, I guess, circumstances so that your rubric is not, giving a disadvantage to certain, populations. Again, here, sharing your rubric for transparency. Are you making the rating scale or the weighted categories available to your applicants? Being transparent, again, you mitigate your risks and the time that you have. You're going to have less questions coming in to you, with people being confused as to how they're supposed to, submit the application, what they're supposed to do in a certain place. Making sure that, everybody is pretty much aware of that they have the same playing field, right? An advantage with your scholarship program. All right, so with that, let me take a look here. We're already over time. Any questions?
There are no questions in the chat at this time.
All right. So I just, want to make sure that, you're aware of how the application and the rubric play together, that, they have to click. If you haven't reviewed your application and your rubric, that this is the time to do it before you upload it, that it's making sense, whatever needs to be weighted a particular way is being weighted, and that it's still meeting, the needs of your club and the needs of the community. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, here, I think someone's typing. Thank you, Liz. Yeah, and and I hope that I do want to end this webinar with extending you the opportunity for us to stay engaged. I've learned some great things from Tiffany and Robin, that we can bring into our clubs, the Turn It Around scholarship, really looking in depth to what is happening in our communities and finding creative solutions to help those students that are struggling, but again, still have the potential, to do great things, right? Maybe a citizen scholarship, what are those students that are making a difference in our community? Thinking of ways that, we can improve our scholarship programs and reach our communities is a great way for clubs to also touch on the issues that are surrounding our community. Scholarship programs, your welfare programs, philanthropy programs are great ways for clubs to do that. And I hope that you tune in to our council chats. We're actually going to be talking about how clubs and our outside community organizations can work together to improve our communities and build up our communities. So this has been great, and thank you again.